Welcome to Just Relationships, the show that offers you concrete ways to make your relationships better. Whether it's your boss, your spouse, your children, or your friends, the quality of your relationships in life directly affects how you feel about yourself and the success you achieve. Your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer, a psychotherapist, telecoach, author, and seminar leader, will interview top experts to help you learn to manage this essential part of your life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer.
Greetings to you. Would you like to have your very own coach? Have you ever thought about having a coach? Many people maybe don't think about it. They may think, oh, I don't need a coach. I'm doing fine just the way I am. And yet, isn't it interesting how the top sports figures and the top entertainment figures have coaches? Well, I am here for you to hear about what it means to be an executive coach. And I'd like to introduce to you David Schulman. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Dr. Duffy. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. Greetings to all the listeners.
Yes.
Great to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have some people in the audience are executives, and what would be the difference between, in case somebody wanted to just have their own personal coach or business coach, as opposed to an executive coach? And of course, I'll throw in, answering any way you'd like, the difference between coaching and counseling.
Okay, very good. So, executive coaches focus on the domain of work and the individual inside the domain of work. There are myriad kinds of coaches outside the world of work. Football coaches, there are sports performance coaches, there are diet coaches, and the word coach, the title coach, is bandied about quite liberally these days. But executive coaches will have a rigorous path to that profession. In my own case, I'm a graduate of New York University's executive coaching program, which is strictly for people who have had experience working in the field of psychology or behavioral health and are interested in being co-creators with leaders in organizations.
Oh, okay, co-creators with other leaders, you said.
Well, so that's at the essence of coaching, really, and it's a big distinction between coaching and psychotherapy, as you're aware. But for our listeners, coaching is very much about who am I being today, how am I performing, and what are my strengths, what are the obstacles to a higher level of performance, and how can I get there? As opposed to psychotherapy, which really is focused on the domain of healing and is forward-thinking in terms of what's possible as you heal and from a position of health. Am I being clear about the distinction?
Oh, yes. So coaching has more to do with how do we perform, what are the obstacles, and how do we get beyond those obstacles. And the counseling is, I think, also behavioral, how we are in the world, not necessarily from the performance per se aspect, and of course how are we in our inner world, which you're saying that as an executive coach you do take in the inner world of the executives you work with.
I mean, you're ever present for your work experience, and so your work experience is going to be shaped by your behavioral system, by your communication style, by your personal aspirations, and your inventory of desires. It's got everything to do with who you are. So that's the focus of it. And having been trained as a Gestalt psychotherapist, I'm very aware that there's a lot of information available to people when they start listening to other aspects of self beyond their head chatter, if you will.
so many aspects to ourselves besides our head chatter. I like how you put that. So many people get stuck in their own head chatter or negative self-talk, or as the Zen Buddhists call it, the monkey mind. And
yeah, very, very easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's immune from it.
Right.
And so you don't necessarily want to trust that as an authoritative source about what's going to lead you to health and success, you know?
Absolutely. There's an expression in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's something like, the idea of who or what is taking up rent in my head. And I don't necessarily want that.
Sure, really good reference.
Yeah. So if somebody, one of our listeners, just a regular person who's not necessarily an executive, wanted to look for a coach, what actually would they be doing if they went to a coach?
Well, it has everything to do with what it is they want to accomplish inside that relationship. So if I am interested in getting out of the career that I'm in and following my creative bliss to a living that supports and sustains me and brings me alive, that would be the focus of the coaching. It would really be about exploring those strengths, those desires, and doing some experimentation around what's possible.
I like that. And you used the term before, inventory of desires. Is there such a thing?
I'm sure somebody created that.
Okay.
I mean, I just think of it that way because,
yeah,
there's so much, it's a continuum, and on top of that continuum, really, there's a hierarchy of desires. Some can be very small, like I'd like to be treated better than I am in my executive role, or I'd like to earn the respect of the people that work for me, and yet it's been elusive. Or somewhere higher along that chain of desire, I don't see why I've leveled off in this position when I feel like I really have the capacity to lead this organization. And I want to develop the influence and figure out which skills I need to further develop in order to do that, and lay the groundwork for that kind of movement.
That's a really good example, leveled off. I'm thinking about that term plateauing, and it's always between the individual and their environment, right? How much can we impact the individual? Of course, the environment impacts the individual, and the individual impacts the environment. What is the good give and take there?
Agreed. It's a very reciprocal arrangement energetically.
Yeah.
But when people feel like the influence they can exert or the traction they can achieve has become stalled, then coaching's a great intervention.
Yeah, yes. And I like the word influence. So obviously executive coaches are supposed to be very influential. And can you give us some examples of people that you have worked with, or success stories, or where people have not acted according, as influential as they would like, and how you've helped them with that?
Sure, and I think influence is a great place to share some of those stories from, because if you think about it, your ability to succeed inside an organization, inside a family, sometimes inside a society, has to do with your influence. Who can you show yourself to and move them to affect the change that you're interested in seeing? Yeah,
I was actually going to ask you, I never really thought to define what influence is. So you're talking about some sort of movement of that your desire somehow affects a change in others?
Exactly. What is your capacity to manifest the change that you desire for yourself, or the change you'd like to see happen in the organization? Where does your power rest in terms of that equation, and how can you amplify it? How can you grow your influence among the people who are around you? Yeah.
I like that. The capacity to manage the change that you would see for yourself and for your organization, and your capacity, and then even how do you go beyond that? How do you amplify it? How do you... It's kind of like having a success formula, and let's take it and let's make it a formula, and let's you really utilize it so we can.
So let me give you an example. Of, from the ranks of executive success. I worked with a company recently who had absorbed another company. This was an organization that deals in manufactured goods, and they had purchased this smaller company as part of their growth strategy, and they had made the owner of the smaller company a full partner in the larger organization. And the new organization was not a hostile place, but it was not welcoming to the leadership style of this guy who was very used to running his own show, and who was able to get his way. It really had unlimited influence in his organization. In this organization, although he enjoyed a full partnership legally and financially, his capacity to get anything done was really low. And so with that individual, it's really important to bring him feedback from the people inside the new organization, from people who came over from his original organization, specifically looking at his communication style and his capacity or lack of capacity for collaboration. So those were key things that were interrupting his ability to influence. And as a result of that static or fixed position in terms of communication and relationship, he was really frustrated. So we were able to work with that, create a lot of awareness, and one of the things that was really useful, by the way, was to not only help him recognize how to read the room when he was communicating, but also to monitor his own experience using his body. And I know that, you are a very accomplished Gestalt therapist, and you could speak to that when we're ready to do that. But that's a very, very powerful toolkit to bring into a situation where somebody's awareness is low.
Yes. So read the room. That is all about social intelligence, and which is a part of emotional intelligence. And a lot of people are more having low emotional intelligence and therefore low social intelligence. And monitoring one's own body, thank you for the compliment, and we will in the next segment look at the nature of Gestalt and what Gestalt therapy is about, because that's about wholeness and body-mind awareness. But I see how you can use that in a work setting, an executive setting. So these are kind of tall orders. When I work with my clients and ask them what is going on in their body, ask them to do a body scan, because we say the body never lies, the body tells the truth. And can you read your own body? And most people don't even have that language, that kind of language.
Yeah, it's really starting at a very primary level with some people who've never thought on those terms. But once you realize, you know what, I live inside a body, and my body both reacts to stimuli and predicts and responds to the prediction, then you're well on your way to being a more powerful communicator and a person who connects better with others.
Yeah, we call that being fully embodied. So the old guy, that was the one that was purchased, that company was purchased, and
yes.
It was the old guy who actually did the purchasing, I'm guessing.
Well, there are two significant players. One was the owner of the larger company who purchased the smaller company.
Yeah.
And so it was the leader of the smaller company who was having difficulty functioning inside the larger company.
Right. Because, as you say, he was used to running the entire show, and now he went from it's kind of like going from being an individual to being a couple.
It's a very, very good analogy, and it's a major challenge. A lot of people who are attracted to creating an enterprise are very focused on that and are tremendously powerful in that way, and some of them may lack the kind of skills that it takes to work for somebody else, but they can be developed.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, well, that's the optimism that we can learn these skills. So I imagine the owner of the larger company was the one that paid you?
Well, yes, it was corporate paid, and that is one of the ways into coaching. One of the doors is a remediative door where it's perceived that something needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
Another door is where people who are very aware want to enter into a thinking partnership and have an ally who will help them assess their strengths and build on them.
Right.
So that's another way in. I mean, those are the two typical ways in. Yeah.
It's either remedial or someone really is already operating quite well and wants even more success, more movement.
I mean, if you think about whatever sports hero you relate to, whatever Broadway star, whatever movie star, they've all got coaches.
Yeah,
They don't have executive coaches.
Right.
But they have coaches that are familiar with their domain.
Yeah.
And make them more powerful by virtue of adding another set of eyes and ears.
Yeah.
And having somebody to challenge their thinking and motivate them when they're flagging a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I enjoy watching the show The Voice, and I particularly enjoy when they show the behind the scenes of the stars coaching the new talent, and how they are able to combine the cheering on, and this is great, you're great, and can you do this phrasing a little differently, that a little higher, that a little bit more raspy or falsetto or whatever it is.
Sure. And when you have a very high-performing leader to work with, it's exactly that kind of thing. It's really looking at communication, for example, and saying, you seem very, very strong here. You seem very, very strong here. But when we use some multi-rater data, in other words, where we've asked people inside the organization to talk about you, one of the things they point to is that you don't seem to have a lot of time for informal conversation, and that may be so as a result of having a very busy job. But if it is the backbone and the essence of an organization's strength to support its people, estimation flagging a little bit in terms of creating relationships, then there's an opportunity.
So do you do that? Is it that fairly common to give some sort of questionnaire? Like we look at 360-degree feedback, which it's the opposite of top down. Now it's bottom up, and it's both. Instead
we'll do both. It's very, very useful. I mean, it's difficult to coach somebody in a vacuum. I mean, you'll have your observations, but you'll be much more powerful as a coach if you have some data to point to.
Right. And the evidence still is subjective, right? But in the
absence of it, particularly if you're coaching a scientific leader, someone who is well placed inside medicine or engineering, pharma, you really need to have your ducks in a row in terms of the why. Why would it be useful to work on this?
Right, to really provide people with a reason, and that helps with their motivation. What's the payoff? What's the reward? What's the vision?
Well, so, it's different in every case, but when somebody feels themselves becoming more empowered in finite ways, that's really motivating, exciting to them, and it has a ripple effect through the organization, starting with the most immediate ring of constituents around them.
Yeah, ripple effect of the ideal, of course, is that everyone becomes empowered.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, so how can people get in touch with you if they would like some executive coaching?
Oh, thank you very much for asking. You can get to me on LinkedIn if you're on LinkedIn at David B. Schulman, SCHULMAN, MS LMHC, or under the name of my firm, DBS YOU and Company Incorporated. Or if you have a telephone, you can give a call 631-673-3027.
Okay, so DBS, I love that, DBS YOU and Company, and is that your website?
Yes,
okay.
It's actually dbsusandco.com if you're interested in finding me there, or on LinkedIn, or by the phone, or skywriting.
Wow.
Yes.
Skywriting.
I do a lot of sky gazing.
I don't even know about skywriting. Oh, my word.
Haven't you ever seen a plane go by?
Yes. Well, that kind of sky. That kind
happy
of
anniversary, or smoke camels.
Okay. And your phone number is 631-673-3027. That's 631-673-3027. David Schulman. And if people just Google David Schulman, would they be able to find you?
I suspect they will.
Okay, so David Schulman, SCHULMAN. Okay, and 631-673-3027. So I want to hear, we have just a couple of minutes left. I'd like to hear about this old guy, how you helped him go from being the king of a very small hill to a co-king of a larger hill.
Yeah, I'll say that he's not perfect, but he's come a long way in terms of his relationships, in terms of his ability to communicate, his ability to read a room and see how he's being received and adjust. And part of the process was to renegotiate the relationship with the owner of the larger company, now his partner.
Yeah.
And that's an ongoing thing, but they do talk in a way that they hadn't talked before, and that started with facilitated conversations through coaching.
Yeah, so just to renegotiate between the, it's basically one owner, I guess, even though the contract was you really are an equal partner. So, but still, the larger company bought the smaller company, so it still is one owner in a partnership, which is kind of an interesting challenge.
Well, that dynamic is very much in play. I mean, when I say equal partner, that's an estimation.
Yeah.
In terms of who's got more shares, who's the owner of the bigger company, who bought the smaller company.
Yeah.
But, they're very much intertwined, and they're doing a much better job of talking to each other. And I'll say this as well. One important part of the process, which I feel really shapes and reinforces my belief that people who are coaches should also understand mental health and behavioral health, was to allow the junior partner to grieve. I mean, he really has suffered a great loss, although he had suffered some great gain as well.
Right. Wow. When I've done consulting and training, I have really emphasized that a great deal, the grieving for the losses. And I worked with a company where 3 separate agencies kind of had to merge into one. And they each were mourning the loss of their own agency, literally, and their own territory, their own jurisdiction.
Yes.
And I saw immediately, even though the people who hired me had no clue, and they simply wanted their people to perform better, I had to explain to them that we have to acknowledge the losses and allow for some grieving and acknowledge those losses before we could really look at the gains involved.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So I would say to your listeners that if they are in the market for an executive coach, that they ought to find one with a behavioral health background, because it's so critical that a coach understands motivation, has a strong sense of how humans make choices based on their needs. And there's a lot inside the domain of mental and behavioral health that informs what's happening in the office.
Yeah, and we have to close, and I couldn't agree more, David Schulman, because next time in part 2 of this series with you, we will be talking about mental health and Gestalt therapy, and so coaches really do need to have some solid behavioral and mental health background. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, David Schulman, Schulman.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Duffy. Thank you, Kim, and listeners, thank you. Bye-bye.
Welcome. And this is Dr. Duffy Spencer saying goodbye for now and wishing you great relationships.